So as you all know, the topic of today's webinar is all about how to evaluate a modular factory. And so we brought in some experts to help you guys understand this. This is something that, as people are kind of exploring modular maybe for the first time, this comes up. You could go to a factory, but how do you really evaluate what you see? How do you know that a factory is performing the way that you need it to ensure the success of your project? So we're going to give you guys some actionable tips and tricks today on how to evaluate that. Before we get started, I'd really encourage you to put your cell phones away. There's so much incredible content here, and I would hate for you to miss it because you're distracted. And I'm going to read, before I put my cell phone away, I'm going to read out one LinkedIn comment. When we were promoting the webinar, someone said, "Of all the industrial construction gurus, I will spend what short time I have on this earth. Listening to these guys are definitely on the short list." So it doesn't get much better than that. So
Who
just
said
to
that?
quickly,
They're on my Christmas list. Who
It
said
was
that?
Henry. It was Henry.
yeah, did you pay someone to write that, Nick?
That was, yeah, nom de plume.
So just a short intro, Volumetric Building Companies is a global company. We've done projects all over the world. We have factories both within the United States as well as in Europe. And so we do have a lot of experience. These are all VBC buildings that have been built and are completed. And so we're a big proponent of modular construction and think that it can shepherd in kind of the future of building and construction. But let's get to our hosts. These are the people that you guys are here to learn from. So we have Helena, who is our Chief Technology Officer at Volumetric Building Company. She has been involved in standing up and running some of the most state-of-the-art modular factories in the world. And so she brings deep expertise on running and managing factories. Then we have Nick Masci and Melissa McEwen, who are the principals and co-founders of the Industrialized Construction Group. They're bringing expertise across the AEC industry and really have experience on kind of both sides of the aisle. I think one of the things they're going to talk about today is a standardization around how do you make evaluations and performance levels of different factories. So they're trying to do for manufacturing what, LEED certifications did for architecture, for example. And I think that's so needed in the industry. So I'm excited to they're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm just going to dangle that carrot right now. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass off the screen to Nick, and we're going to dive into it.
Okay, so yeah, really happy to be with you all. Melissa, why don't you kick us about us?
Okay, so Caitlin did such a beautiful job. I'll be really quick. So we are the Industrialized Construction Group. We bring together a mix of people with deep expertise in the AEC industry. We've been in it for the majority of our careers, and what that means is we actually understand how hard it is to change, how much about our business systems need to change, how much about project delivery needs to change, with manufacturing experts who have spent time both on the tried and true traditional manufacturing side of the aisle, automotive, chemicals, pulp and paper, but have successfully made that transition into construction, modular building, prefabrication. So as a company, we focus on these three areas. We're going to talk a little bit about our maturity assessment and benchmarking that Caitlin just referenced. We have some tailored construction manufacturing solutions to help fabricators, modular builders improve their performance, and also some advisory services with owners to help look upstream at how we can change some of the systems, productize our portfolios of buildings, and move forward faster. How'd I do?
You're killing it already. Helena?
Yes, I wanted to bring some context to what we're looking at here. I mean, modular construction has been around for decades and decades, so why are we not getting it is a valid question. And why is it so hard? So I've tried to explain this from the contextual surrounding that's there. When you look at manufacturing at large, you will have a stable site. It's made, whatever thing you're making, it's made inside a factory. You can set up your production flows and you can control them fully because you know your product. The product is fully defined. You have that nice controlled environment, and the people that are there are somewhat stable as a workforce. You work, and this is how lean manufacturing and also actually lean construction once was derived from this stability, that there is a flow, you create and maintain, you can work with continuous improvement, you're product centric, and you very much plan to a delivery date. Now, the opposite of this is this, which is where our product goes. It goes to a new site for every project. This is the production flow that you have on site is super project specific. You can standardize to a point if you're, for example, only in housing, but the site is giving you challenges that you really can't control. You plan your flow differently. You plan your flow through a parade of trades. So you manage all your subcontractors and people that come in to spend as little time as they can on site, and therefore being resource efficient rather than flow efficient. This is another piece of a construction site, is that your actual factory, your actual site is constantly transforming. So you have a new landscape every day when you come to work. That is kind of what you have with construction. So it's more about forecast planning here rather than planning to a final delivery date, which you of course have, but you can't do everything that you thought you were able to do the day before. So these two worlds now are suddenly having a child. So construction, the mother is construction. We want to serve the world with quick manufacturing and good product. And the father is manufacturing, and they had a kid, which is industrialized construction, which borrows a little bit from each then. The factory in modular or industrialized really needs a full factory loading. It thrives from a product, and you can continuously work on cost reduction and efficiency and so forth. So what does mother and father think about their little kid here now? Construction, as the mother is saying, you're not real construction. You don't really count because you're not on site, and you're not, with the tool belt and all of that stuff that a really good construction guy or girl should have. And manufacturing is looking at the same kid and saying, well, I'm decades ahead of you. You don't really know what manufacturing is because your product isn't well defined and you don't know how to run manufacturing. So when we're borrowing people from construction and from manufacturing and trying to have them work in this industrialized construction space, it's really difficult because this space is not one or the other. It's both. And that is the piece that I think ICG is trying to bring to the table, and have us understand how hard this is, and also how to evaluate that situation that is in that gray space. So I really enjoy working in the space because I like problems that you can't solve. So I'm gonna be here for many years to come.
Good. Oh, thank you for, this really does beautifully lay out the tension that's evident and the opportunity that's here. So I think, Melissa, you do a really good job of, kind of laying out like, okay, if this is the tension, then how does the system need to respond? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the way you describe that, Helena, I love. It is more than just where we build. So I think there's been this perspective that we just can shift the work off site and that's good enough. But this tension between construction and manufacturing and all the parts of the systems that need to change is there. And especially on the owner side, architect, engineering, this is truly about reconfiguring all of the process and business systems to make them work in this new world of industrialized construction, to bring the best of them together, which is why we believe it would help to know what good looks like, to know what parts of the system need to change and how they need to change. And that's really why we think we need assessment standards and benchmarks for this moment we're in construction. This is one of our favorite Shigeo Shingo quotes. The most magnificent scheme in the world will be worthless if you don't understand what your current condition really is against a picture of what good, great operational excellence looks like. So with that in mind, we want to walk through a little bit now how we think you can assess this level of industrialized construction excellence that applies to modular building, prefabrication, multi-trade prefabrication, through our lens, and then move into helping you pick out pieces and parts of that that you can use when you're going out to visit the factory, to meet with factories, to do interviews, to write an RFP, depending on where you are in the system.
And without that, then these problems do persist. So keep going, Melissa. You're on a roll.
Okay, so when this gap to good is not seen, broad problems in the industry exist. We hear this question every day. If modular is so great, if prefab is so great, why isn't everybody winning? But there are root causes in our system that are why everybody's not winning. So we don't have a common data environment. Systems aren't connected. In manufacturing, these systems across the supply chain are connected. In construction, they tend to be pretty disconnected. We're working on that as an industry. We don't have adequate design for manufacturing and assembly. So I think the industry is working on it. There are great productizers out there, but if you're an owner on this call, we need your help. We need you to start thinking about your building programs through the lens of products, not one-off construction projects. These things drive inefficiency in the factory. Then we get poor quality. There's rework. We're making decisions about how to operate our factories or our project performance without good, strong data that we're collecting on the factory floor. And all of this leads to the predominant mindset that Helena mentioned, the construction, the mother mindset, if you will. It holds us in the current state. Then we get mediocre results. This erodes confidence. Oh, that doesn't work. We're never going to get there. And companies fail. And we'd really like to move forward, have less companies fail, have the industry succeed. What did I miss, Nick? Anything?
No, I mean, let's talk about, how do we go ahead and assess the factory? And like when we're talking about this today, we want you to know, like, we're assessing the factory, but this needs to be expanded across the whole value chain. So when we're taught how to assess the factory, one of the questions you should come out at the end of it is, how good a participant am I going to be as an owner, as a general contractor? Whatever, like one of the questions should be at the end of your factory visit or however this is happening is like, now that I've done this, how do you think I'm going to perform in your environment? Like reflection and humility is a key part of this. So let's talk about how we assess a factory. So,
and as Nick dives into it, this is how we assess a factory. Not everybody needs to apply the same level of rigor and expertise, though the industry needs it. Then we'll break it down to how you all can apply these same concepts.
Yeah, and then Melissa, I think we've talked about this a lot. It was more than 6 years ago when we decided to pivot our practice to industrialized construction, the megatrend, because we believed in it. I was in the constantly being assessed for readiness. You can't wait till you're in the theater to understand if you can perform. And these types of assessments have been in mature manufacturing for decades and decades. We think that the time is right now because we're bringing the right amount of rigor in our data, in our models, so that we can bring these things off site and have faith that when these assemblies show up on site, they're going to fit. And so this is why it's also a moment in time when this is we're ripe for this.
Absolutely.
So yeah, go right ahead.
This is the our framework for assessing performance. It's the Industrialized Construction Maturity Assessment. We looked at, as Nick said, there's a ton of assessments out there. Mature manufacturing uses these. So we said, well, can we learn from that as an industry, take these, but tailor them to construction? Because as Helena set up, there is still this tension. There are things that we will and need to continue to do differently. So we adapted the concepts to think about what we knew about the system of construction. So it has 6 disciplines. You'll see these across the bottom of the screen here. It looks at the whole system. So it's not just manufacturing, design for manufacturing and assembly. We also need to think about our strategy, our culture inside our companies. Are they set up to enable these other things to succeed? Our management systems is how we are running our business, our core KPIs. If we're a traditional construction firm moving into this space, sometimes our core business KPIs are actually 100% at odds with what makes a successful manufacturing approach. So we need to look across the whole system to understand how to make it succeed. 5 levels of performance. And let's go to the next slide. So this gives you a sense of some of the rigor that's behind each of these topics. I touched on a few of these as we in the past slide there. We also look at ESG. We should be tracking and starting to make visible the great benefits of modular building prefabrication in moving the needle forward around reducing carbon, making our buildings more sustainable, reducing waste, reducing scrap. So it looks at the whole system of performance. Nick, anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I just say, you know, we color coded these. So on the top, you've got the gold color, and on the bottom is the darker color. And I think when we're talking about this today, we think for people that don't have factory expertise, if you could take what you know in the top part of this and ask questions, you'll be able to ascertain whether the technical capabilities, kind of call this nemawashi. If you have the top part, you've created the conditions by which the technical can flourish. So what I want you to ask as you're going to the factory floor is, you know a lot about management systems. So we want to know, how reliably are you using the data so we have constancy of purpose? So I can see immediately what the status of the system is. Those are some good. You'll see whether they have manufacturing methods that promote that. So we're thinking about this, and we're going to get into these very specific questions. We're thinking about it in this way. How can you be asking questions that are fundamental that will reveal whether the system is ready to perform? Helena, anything to jump in anytime? How's everyone doing? Good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
But it's a tough task to do because you're overwhelmed when you come to a factory. So you have so
Yes.
many things to look at. So maybe there is some simpler guidance to be had.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see if we can do that. So we're thinking about these. If we think about, you know, the 5 levels of competency that or maturity that Melissa had indicated within each one of the topics, this is generally what we want to have happening. Is, you know, when we think about this, of these 5 levels, level 3 is our target condition for the next iteration of this industry. We want stability. We want improved project outcomes across safety, quality, cost, and delivery. That's what everyone wants. Better buildings at a lower cost, faster, that are less of a burden on the human, to take less of a burden on the human to perform them. And so if you're not there, then you're either above or below it. And right now we're below it. As an industry, we're still developing and we have inconsistent results. And this has been the frustration that's been happening. So if we're better able to assess ourselves and the supply chain, the factories that are producing, then we can move towards higher stability. And so when you're in this emerging area, which has been happening now for some time, we have unimproved or even worse results. And if you're developing, you have unstable processes, unstable plants, then you have inconsistent results. And then we talked about level 3, and then level 4 and level 5 are flavors of operational excellence, where we're now digging into the supply chain more deeply into integrated. And then we don't even know what's next and things up there, but the world is evolving so fast. We're like, question mark, question mark. So throwing in the chat, what do you think level 5 looks like? What's your aspiration? Where's this going to head to? You know, obviously we want a better built environment. Everybody's got a healthy and happy home to live in, and other metrics.
I think a lot of people actually give up when you are at level 2 you're at
Yes.
inconsistent results, and then you get confused. So you don't know what to do next because it isn't working. Whatever you're doing, it isn't working. So that's also confounding.
Yes.
I think, Helena, people give up on the shop floor, right, and the production environment, but I actually think the upstream consumers of our products give up too, right? And we do need to recognize we're on a learning curve here, and we have to be on that journey together if we're going to change it.
So, Melissa, what's the current condition? What's happening right now?
So this is based on the data in our ICMA database. The industry average is where we're talking about right now. And this includes modular builders. This includes people that have been at this for decades. It also includes a lot of the traditional specialty trade contractors, MEP contractors, even general contractors who are starting to self-perform. These are all people in the industry who are making this shift to deliver in this different way. So if you look at the industry average line, it kind of depicts we still are looking like construction under a roof. And if it looks and feels like construction under a roof at a whole industry level, then that's why we're getting the results that we're getting. We really aren't changing the system enough to get better performance results. Our industry leaders are much higher up in some of these areas. In fact, this slide is actually not live. And I would say the industry leaders are up closer to the level 3 and level 4 performance out there in some of these categories. I think an interesting thing is that you can see the lowest scores are in the area of DFMA and manufacturing. This isn't surprising based on what Helena said at the beginning, right? Those are the manufacturing competencies. The things on the left side of our assessment picture here, these are the competencies that we already have in our industry, but we need to tweak them and raise them up to a higher level and align them with the manufacturing and DFMA disciplines. So the gap is huge, I guess, Nick, is the answer to that, and we need to close it rapidly.
Yeah. So, I mean, showing where I think anytime that we show performance, we want visual management. We want something you can manage from. And so I think that is the definition of visual management. We show it and we can take action against it. So I'm not in favor anytime of just showing data, but also what is the target condition, because then we're showing the gap and the problem to solve. So if we take one of our disciplines, and this one is in the design phase of design for manufacturing and assembly, sometimes we just call it DFX, which is designing for the next thing, then we can look at some of our topics here and we can say, well, where are the scores? But really, what is the target condition? So on any run chart, I always like to put the target line as a red line. It's not a problem. It's just something to close. So that's why we use red. And so we're saying what we would like for programmatic owners or projects to do is be setting target conditions for each one of the disciplines or indeed these topics, and then knowing what the gap is. So the idea behind this is that it's giving you X-ray vision into predictive performance. That's what we want. We don't want, lessons learned, fine. I'd much rather do a prediction of failure than understanding why the failure happened. So I think what's nice about like you to do is look into processes, because processes are predictors of outcomes. So what we're showing here is topics that we look into and where we think the target performance should be. And this might be for a very advanced project, because like I said before, if we can just get these into level 3, we'd have stability and new results. So level 3 would be a great target. What we're showing here also with the asterisks is that these are things that, while you're assessing a factory, these are things where the system needs to be operating in harmony. So if we're looking at real integration amongst the team, the subs and suppliers, of course, you can't hold the factory accountable for that. End-to-end stakeholder involvement, how well are you positioning them so that they have the right behaviors for this? The path to mass customization can't happen if you're constantly flipping your mind about what the design is going to be. You're doing the design integration. How well are we integrating the design so that we can really manufacture it? The slogan is, we only design what the factory can build. We don't design for manufacturing. And the A part is about the assembly. So we have to be thinking about each one of these letters in DFMA very discreetly and with great interrogation. Melissa, what do you have to add to this one?
You did a great job. I think we should keep going.
Okay. Oh, you're telling
I
me to
might
go faster?
add a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go for it.
I could probably add just a flavor. I
Yeah.
find myself teaching many clients and architects and engineers constantly teaching about what it is, how you do it, why you shouldn't do certain things. Because one of the things that people like when they come into a factory is that they get so mesmerized around the system. So the thought process is, oh, let's challenge this and see what I can do with it, which is the direct opposite of what you should be doing. You should be saying to yourself, let's see how fast I can get this to run. And the path to get there is the DFMA method. So really appreciate this discussion.
Yeah, and I really appreciate what you're saying, which is don't go in and be mesmerized.
Yeah.
Go in there and be, be grateful for being on the, for being allowed to get next to the operator, but go ahead and ask with respect, what is going on? Melissa, what are we looking at?
So there are owners out there who are starting to ask the question, well, wait a minute, can I look systematically and better evaluate my potential project performance? Pick my partner, not just based on the product, which is really important, but also really understanding whether their operation is going to help set me up for success. So this is an example of a large institutional owner with a very large student housing program. And they did go out and look at the supply chain utilizing this maturity assessment to understand not just what the performance was, but what were the biggest risks for them in terms of their specific project and program goals. So they were able to see how different factories, how different prefabricators stacked up in different areas. You actually can see there is some wide variability in both topics, in performance level. And for this owner, this was a chance to say, okay, can I manage this risk? Can I work with the factory to close this gap? I want to choose this product, but I can now see this performance risk in this area. And so it gave them insights to make a much more informed decision and also be a better owner because they understood their own contributions to the success of the system.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add to that is that when we do this, we tell the owners, we're going to give you these scores. Your job is not to weaponize these.
Right.
Your job is to adopt a supplier development type of mentality, the mentality that has allowed mature manufacturing to make great gains. So let's talk about some factory tour essentials. Now we're going to get into the things that you can look at to help make better assessments and judgments to improve your project or programmatic goals.
So when we sifted through our data and started to look at how some of the topics in the assessment lined up, we really realized there are these core competencies out there that we need to build in the industry. And when we looked at them, the gap between the industry average and the top performers in these competency areas was making huge differences in both the success of the factories and the success of the customers and projects that they served. And so what I hope stands out, Helena, what stands out to you on this chart?
I think the piece that often trips people is that they look at the factory as a standalone unit, and it just performs as a factory, but it really cannot operate without good input and output, downstream input as well. So it is very much a supply chain challenge that we're looking at. And I think the earlier point around the client actually being part of that supply chain, because the end goal is to build a building, and we are all needed to create that. So this ever ongoing kind of war that exists in construction, where you're kind of wanting to nail each other for who was wrong and who should pay for this and what's the change order and whatnot. It's very, very counterproductive to actually resolving any housing crisis or any other crisis we have identified in construction. So for me, it's a system we're looking at.
Absolutely. That's reflected in kind of the notion of thinking and managing in systems. One of the things that jumped out to me that I was really excited about is None of these core competencies where we saw the biggest gaps are really technology related. We have all the technology we need. We have been investing in the digital transformation in the AEC industry. Are we where manufacturing is? No, but we've caught up fast. These are process related things. And that's really good news because these are things we can work on. These are competencies we can build, and these are things that deliver results quickly. So let's talk, Nick, about how this audience can look for these things in a quick 1 hour walk through a factory.
Okay, so one thing that everybody wants, I don't care if you're in traditional construction or you're in manufacturing, people want flow. And that's what we're really after, which we're after the accrual of value in a consistent way. And that's really what flow is. And so one of the killers to flow is waiting for anything. So, typically this means waiting for information, waiting for material. It could be waiting for manpower too. That's definitely something that's in the industry. But we're going to show you here one example of waiting for information and how you can do this on the factory floor. So there are very few places that have gone completely digital. And so you'll still see paper around, and that's okay. That's not an indicator that things are wrong. What is an indicator that things are not operating quite right is if you see papers with a bunch of writing on them. That means that something has been delivered that is not meeting the quality standard. We haven't made it very plain for the operator what needs to happen. And so here you can see a drawing that has 19 questions on it. Now, what's the chance that assembly is going to keep moving down the line without interruption with 19 questions? It's 0. So that's what we're looking for, things like this. So you should be asking then, why are you asking these questions? How often does this happen? So we're looking for how often it happens. And then this will lead into questions like, how does this get resolved? How does this get escalated? Is there a method for this? So we can look into other things about problem escalation, continuous improvement, so you can see how the system works. Any comments on this one before we go to the next?
I just wanted to say that this was a specific example of one thing that causes waiting, but that's just something in general to look for as you're walking the flow of a factory. Do you see people waiting? Are there machines waiting? And just be asking as you're doing the tours, talking with the plant leaders, why? Why is somebody waiting? What's going on here? These are indicators of process maturity and process stability.
This is also a place where a competence of the crew in the factory shows. So if you start looking at what are they waiting for, if you, for example, see large piles of materials with dust on them, showing that they have been sitting for a few days, maybe the internal logistics team isn't really up to snuff here. So you can start asking questions about this. And same thing with drawings. Having a lot of drawings with fingerprints on them and much writing, and maybe some have been thrown away and you can see several versions of the same drawing. Again, not really having a good information flow delivery here.
So another thing we want to be looking for is, are work instructions visible to the operator, and what's happening at the actual work cell. So in the bottom picture, you can see that this operator has visibility into the work instructions and what's happening in terms of performance. So this is a more advanced facility, but it doesn't need to be an advanced facility. But I like that this operator has access to both those things, and they are both right in view of where the work is happening. The person does not need to change their gaze from the work and the work instructions and to see the level of productivity. That is a nice depiction of how it should be. This person does not, and I was watching this person for a while. This person was on easy street. And then if we're looking at the top picture here, we have the standard work. This is how to do the work. And also there's some instructions there for maintenance activities. So this is great. So we're coupling then how to keep the equipment performing well as how to do the work.
And these seem like really basic things, but they contribute so deeply to process stability and the efficiency and effectiveness of a factory. And they're also things that are really easy to see or not see when you are walking a plant.
Yeah, we just want to make sure, you know, one of the things that should happen in a factory is like just another observation, like is the work coming to the worker or is the worker going to the work? So if people are climbing and getting down on their knees, that's a problem. That's what happens on a construction site. The worker goes to the work. It's on the second floor. It's up on this. It's up on that. But in a factory, the work should come to the worker and it should be presented in an ergonomically beautiful way, like this is. The table's at the right height. All the little gizmos and gadgets are right there. The consumable replenishment is right there and handy. If there's something heavy, there's a lifting device there. These are a good example of what should be happening. This, I would predict that this person is able to maintain a steady flow very well. Any comments on this one?
Yeah, I think when you're increasing speed, you become increasingly aware of these time thieves that you're looking at here. And with a takt time of maybe 2 hours, let's say, or 4 hours that you can observe in some factories, you don't have this problem. So this doesn't become pertinent to you. It isn't the first thing you think. But when you're speeding up, this compounds into a lot of time that you use to just move stuff around. And that moves stuff around, that doesn't create any value on your product. So when you're increasing the speed in the flow, the investments that you're looking at here in this picture, most of them are super cheap. This is solvable. So I think this is there's a lot to do in this space.
Yeah, a perfect lead into this one. So you know, with this, you have a better see performance if the work is well known, it's stable, then we can start to see, you know, what's happening. And so this is generally what we would just call, do we see a daily management system? So this would be a very common thing to ask for. Do you have a daily management system? And they may not use those words, but what we want to know is what's earning from our rates of production is basically what we're asking for. So here are two pictures of different daily management boards. And you can see what we're trying to ascertain is really what I would like to see is there hour by hour tracking of what's happening in the production environment? What was supposed to happen in the hour, what actually happened, and why is there a difference between what was supposed to happen and what actually happened? That's the speed of learning. We're learning every single hour. And if you're creating the right environment where we have empowered workers with cycle, then of course, people are full of ideas. So we want to create an idea-driven organization where we're getting hundreds of ideas from our work every year, not 3. So that's what we're trying to see. And it'll help us to build trends. So it'll help us to just, and you can see in each of these boards, there are different elements here that are really nice. In the top board, they're the safety, quality, delivery, and you see those things with the green on them. Each one of those little blocks that's colored in is one day of the month. So they're saying you can see here in the month how they're doing. It looks like in quality, I can see a red one there. So something happened, and how are they getting to the root cause of that? So that leads into problem identification. And in the bottom board, you can see another depiction. You can see off to the right there, it's like hour by hour, what's happening. And then we're tracking across these different pillars that everybody really should be thinking about. These two particular factories are both looking at safety, quality, delivery, inventory, and productivity. So these are some very common ones to be looking for. Comments?
And a
Good.
really simple question to ask if you see a board like this is what is off track today and why, right? And start to hear from the factory why something's off track, what they're doing about it. Again, it gives you a great indication of their problem solving ability, how they're going to be able to pivot and to make adjustments to guarantee that they're going to make your project demand, your cost certainty, all of those things along the way.
Good. Yeah, and what I'd like you to do when you're in the factory is just you know, this idea for us is like being at the Gemba, the place where the work happens, is adopt the 5 why attitude, but it's wrapped around go see, ask why, and show respect. So you can ask why 5 times if you do it in a respectful way. Can you tell me more about that? What did you learn? Why do you think that happened? And so here we're getting back to, you know, some other indicators of stability. We want to know, are there standard work steps? Are there work instructions? Are those things evident? And if you don't have those, then I'd say what you have is a lot of tribal knowledge in the organization. And there are a lot of factories and work sites that are trying to understand succession. And so the way that you do that is I like tribal knowledge from a perspective of mentoring, but I don't want to learn just from that. I want to learn from, there's a slogan, which is without standard work, there could be no improvement because I don't know what the standard is. So we want to be looking for these. Any comments on this one?
I think
Great.
there is a great deal of work that goes into establishing both a visual management system and a standardized work instruction. So it can feel like a burden. And I think it's important to understand, especially for the management system, that it's actually there to take away a lot of the questions and meetings you need to have if you don't have it. So I worked in a lean system for 7 years, and we had 15-minute huddles every day. But that's about all the time we actually spent on some of those issues that we had, because we knew we were going to meet again in 24 hours. So no need for a follow-up meeting, and no need for some extra collaboration, or me walking over to the guy over there and figuring it out and not telling everyone, because the system is also set up to have a backflow of information back and into the organization. So when you see stuff that's working, it looks effortless. And when you're not seeing that, you can understand that people are struggling.
Yes. And some people can be thinking like, oh, this place is a beehive. It looks so productive. This is the opposite of what is actually happening. So I really do like the idea of a visual factory, a factory that actually talks to us and lets us know what its condition is. We don't have to go and interrogate it, and I don't need to go find Helena. Helena, can you come down here and tell me what the status is? Like, the factory is telling us what's going on. Another good question you could just be asking, the construction industry is doing a better and better job every day, and we've really taken to action safety. And so you can be asking questions around safety that will be very helpful. So you can be asking, if we're looking at tooling, we can be asking, in what ways have you adopted tooling in the name of worker safety? So we have here a butterfly apparatus, which is flipping a floor over so we can work on both sides of it in an effortless way, again, so that the work is coming to the worker. And then on the bottom picture, we're using tooling and processes to improve the hierarchy of safety controls. Of course, the last method of safety is personal protective equipment, PPE. So what we want to do is we want to create processes that relieve us of that last countermeasure against the human. So are there ways that we can create the work so that it's safe, and this is the way to couple safety with productivity. Caitlin, we're getting pretty close here, so we're going to leave at least 15 minutes for Q&A. Does that seem like an appropriate amount of time? Good?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, definitely.
great. So those are some of the ways that we use, we wanted to give you some kind of street level things that you could be asking. We also wanted to a little bit more deeply how we look at it as assessors. So when we go in, we look at it a little bit more with a little bit more detail. And this is one example of it. We've kind of truncated a little bit, but this is with regard to the daily management system, the method of daily production that we were just going over that Helena helped reflect upon. So if we're looking into our criteria, we would be saying there is no daily management of resources. Like, you're just showing up and like, hey, you three need to work on that and have that done by the end of the day or the end of the week. Level 2 would be that there's no reflection on the pre happened yesterday. What did we learn? What do I need to fix in terms of material management, materials, tooling? Level 3 would be that there's hourly tracking in place. And you can see we're tracking against those pillars that we were just talking about: safety, quality, cost, delivery, maybe inventory as well. So we're seeing those things, and then we're also seeing those manifest into learning mechanisms. And then level 4 would be each KPI is active and visible, and the DMS, the daily management system, is actually running those things. And our experience, when you have a DMS, a daily management system that is doing these types of things, I'm predicting that there's going to be a 20% improvement in productivity. That's what this benefit is going to be. That's why we're putting the effort into standard work. That's why all these things are happening. And as factories and systems go higher and higher in the maturity and competencies, we actually have to ask fewer and fewer questions as assessors. We can see that these things are in place. So then level 5 is we have mutual and automated visibility that the daily management systems are now cascading into the supply chain, into other facets, so we can be seeing what's happening on a system level. Any comments on these?
This is great, Nick. I think maybe we can jump to the medallions, and I'd love for you guys to have a quick minute to highlight the medallions, and maybe we could explain VBC's place in that, and then let's jump into Q&A after that.
Okay. So what we have done with our medallion system is we've said to ourselves, okay, now that we have a database, and let me just see about making that slide visible. I don't have a slide for that, Caitlin, so I'm just going to talk about it.
That's great.
So what we've done with that is we have said that within our database, what we would like to do is recognize top performers within our database so that people can know what good looks like. So just like LEED did, like saying, I want a LEED silver building, we want to say, if I want silverance on my projects, go get silver level performers in the supply chain. So within our database now, which is gaining more and more data points every day, we're saying, okay, within our database, from the top 1% to the top 40% are going to be eligible for medallions that range from platinum to bronze and in between. And so that's how we're bringing recognition to those that are achieving a certain level of excellence, and you have something to strive for. And then within that, we know what happens when you go from bronze to silver, what happens with both performance, productivity, and project results. So if we look at this, then here's what these medallions look like. They will range from platinum which is the top 1%. Bronze is the top 40%, which also for bronze, you also need to be in level 3. You need to be showing stability. Gold is, Melissa, chime in on these. Gold and silver are.
It's 40, 20, 15, and 5.
Great. So that's where these medallions all stack in. So let's go to the Q&A.
Fantastic. Okay. So the questions kind of range over a variety of different topics. What regulation changes would benefit modular construction growth?
I think this is a good one for Helena. She sees the barriers of regulation probably daily.
She got a big smile at that one too.
She does. I think first of all that there's a great effort ongoing. The ICC is working with diverse states to have them adopt special chapter for modular manufacturing that will simplify the rules. The big difference I see between EU and US lies in the innovation piece of design, where the US is wanting to employ a system that's more prescriptive. So it tells me exactly a wall build-up, what it needs to be, while the EU takes the approach where it's prescribing the properties of those same components, but I'm actually free to exchange if I can show that those properties exist in my alternative. And as a manufacturer, that's a really good opportunity, because now I'm able to choose a material that's more DFMA for me or easier to get and so forth. So it sounds like a nuance, but it really is a game changer when you're working on the floor.
How can we support factory operatives to bring forward their ideas for improvements?
Oh gosh, whoever asked that gets a gold star. So, we want So just I could go on for days about this, but what we're actually looking for is an environment. The people that are closest to the work understand the work. They understand what the barriers are. So I think unlocking this potential is really fantastic. So I think there's two things. We need to give them the basic skills, more basic skills in problem solving. So how do they identify that there's a problem? How do they notify that there's a problem? And then what is the response? So those are the three elements that must be operating together. So we would just generally call this an improvement management system. So there needs to be some structure around it. So again, if
Oh,
Is
is
that-
anyone else having a hard time hearing Nick?
Yeah, Nick, you just broke up. I wasn't sure if that was me or not.
Mm,
We can no
can't-
longer hear
we
you.
can't hear you, Nick, unfortunately.
I'll
Uh,
pick that one up though, because just really quick, this is a gap in our industry. While we're doing a ton to bring lean thinking and problem solving skills into the industry, and LCI has done an amazing amount bringing that thinking into the industry, but applying it sort of to traditional project management part of the game. We really do need to get out into the trades, get into the trade schools. We need to start building these competencies earlier in our industry, not just building the craft skills. And it's a really big gap, but it's one that can be closed again.
Right. This next question is for Helena. If stick build and modular are the same cost, what are other reasons I should consider modular?
So I would say that quality control is one of the big ones, because we're working in an environment where you can control your surroundings and the product that you are producing. And speed is the second one. Normally, a modular or industrialized construction project delivers 40 to 50% faster. And if you are the investor and are sitting with that return on investment calculation, I'm sure you can guess what that does to your bottom line.
Yeah, we have an interesting project right now that we're working on coming out of our Berwick factory in Philadelphia on the Navy Yard, where the client opted to build some of their project site built and some of the project modular. And so the site build they've been on site and they've been building the foundation and the building's starting to go up and we're getting ready to set. We will set our modules in a couple weeks. And we're excited to do a time lapse to show how fast that building is going to go up. And we'll have a head-to-head comparison on almost twin buildings. So you can actually see the real time savings on two identical buildings that started exactly the same time. So we'll make sure to have that information in the newsletter as well as on our LinkedIn. So you guys can stay tuned on that. The next question is, how do you optimize for design for manufacturing? It's kind of
take a stab, or
kind
do
of a
you want
broad
me to go?
topic.
It's very, very broad. So DFMA is really about understanding where your product is going to be produced. So the former question was, how can you support your factory manager? And this is one of the ways you can support him. Listen to what he is saying. What is DFMA in his ecosystem, in his manufacturing facility, or hers for that matter? And make sure that you're actually integrating that into your design. This is not difficult, but it does take some effort because we're not teaching this in schools. Of course not, because we're not teaching system, we're teaching trades. So what is happening, needs to happen here is that you have to be curious as an engineer, architect, developer. What matters? What makes them tick over here? And they will tell you. It's sizes, it's weight, it's I can't reach, my tools don't fit. They will tell you, but you have to listen.
The next question we have is, what medallion did VBC receive from ICG?
There you are.
Are you able to speak? You want me to hit this one? Okay.
I'm going to confirm on VB. You can hear me?
I'm having a hard time. You're getting kind of garbly. I think we'll hand this one off to Melissa.
Yeah, so our medallion system is location specific, so I want to make that very visible. Like there are companies out there with multiple facilities and they can perform differently. So we need to look location by location by location. And the Tracy facility is the one that we looked at for VBC, and it scored in the range of our gold medallions. So yay!
Yeah, thank you. It was great. It was great having you guys on site. It was a really excellent evaluation. So super happy about that.
Next question is, with AI automation and robotics, can modular costs reduce by 20% in the future? If so, when do you anticipate this being the case?
Oh, yeah. I mean, robotics is already there. That we have no lack of machines, really. It's about making them run. AI is more or less unexplored, I would say, on the design side. So I'm eager to put an AI bot into munching through the 6,000 modules already built in the VBC pipeline and make sure that it's taught all the different things, and then it can create designs that are the FMA for us. And the question was, is there 20% cost cutting possible? There is always cost cutting possible, and 20% is a stiff target, but I would say yes, from where the average industry is right now. Yeah. I don't know if you agree, Melissa and Nick.
I mean, I actually think we can achieve that level of cost cutting just with a lot of basic process stability and just bringing process manufacturing methods, no robotics into construction. The robotics are amazing and we should apply them, but I've seen many robotic graveyards and facilities because they weren't ready to operate the equipment. But you can get to those 20% cost savings on process. And then because I am sitting here at Autodesk University, there is a lot of talk about how rapidly AI is going to be applied in the design realm to start to do exactly what you're talking about, Helena. And there are great examples of that happening here in small scales to wall systems and structural components and this and that. So it is coming fast.
The next question is, who has the responsibility to introduce modularity into a project? Would it be the designer? How can a modular company control a developer's designer to make sure that designs are optimized for manufacturing?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, so here's the difference, what I see between EU and US. US, you are, my experience now, you're kind of waiting for a project to be designed modular, so you as a factory can deliver to it. EU, let me present you with my architect's manual or my configurator that will create the project that works. I'm over exaggerating the contrast, of course, but I think there is reaction and proaction in this question. I think this is a chance for manufacturers to actually spread their knowledge through by being proactive against their clients.
And the only thing I would add to it, Helena, is like my gut answer to that is it's the owner's responsibility. You have portfolios and programs and buildings, and you're creating buildings and infrastructure to meet demand in society. And for example, like higher ed and healthcare institutions go through a master planning process, sometimes required by regulations in the US. There is no reason not to be building modularity and prefabrication and kit of parts and standardized components at that stage of the game with the help from your factory partners.
So we kind of touched on this one again, but I just want to make sure, because I think the medallion system is so important to the success of the industry. So someone has said, is there a verifiable global accreditation that modular manufacturers should hold?
We would like to create one. There is not one currently, and it's exactly why we went down this path. People across the system, not just modular manufacturers, general contractors, owners, project managers, designers, we need to have a performance standard for what good looks like if we're going to succeed. So we do believe a global standard and assessment framework would be a big leap forward. And it will help everybody, as Nick said at the beginning, not to weaponize people. It's going to elevate everybody if we have something to compare against and know what our performance targets are to get better.
And the last question, I'm going to bring this up. It's not as pertinent to the discussion at hand here, but I think it is. We get this a lot at BBC, which is, what is the true level of completion of a 3D module leaving a manufacturing site, and what needs to be done on site once it arrives?
So I'm going to answer a little bit broadly and be the political one and say it depends a little bit. But you can reach 95% completion, actually. Where I'm working here in Poland, I have a furniture factory and a modular factory just across the street. And we fill the module, it's all done. We route everything out to the risers. And we have occasions where we lock the door and no one goes into the dwelling until you have finished all the site works. So that's inside. Now you have to remember there is a roof, there is a facade, there is a foundation and stuff. They are not maybe part of your delivery. But here I actually do that. I do attach the facade and the window and all of that stuff into it. So you can reach a really high level of completion. And that's why the speed comes. The more you can push into the factory efficiently, the better for you on site.
Helena, some
Wonderful.
of that is driven by site conditions though, right? There are some cases where you can't and you shouldn't try to. And so that's why your it depends answer to me is absolutely spot on.
Yes, I agree. And that's where modular sometimes goes wrong. We try to do everything in the factory, or we try to automate everything, or we try to kind of let's have a product that everyone loves. That is not the case. This industry is not ready for those things. So you have to be site specific and be mature enough to have that discussion. So I think that's part of the growing up piece of the teenager here.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us, and thanks for our hosts for making time out of their busy days to put together these wonderful slides and educate everyone on, I think, things that are ultimately going to really help and grow the industry. So Melissa and Nick, thank you guys so much for joining us. Helena, thank you for your time. Thanks everyone. And keep your eyes out. We're going to be continuing our educational series, so you'll see more topics like this. If there's a topic you want us to cover in a webinar, feel free to put it in the comments or reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're very active there in posting things and what's going on. So once again, thank you everyone for your time. Appreciate it, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are in the world.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.